Did you know ASBN, America's Small Business Network, is now available on your TV? That's right. ASBN is now streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire Stick, and available for download in the App Store. Scan the QR code to download the ASBN app today. Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. You're watching another edition of the Small Business Show exclusively right here at ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. For entrepreneurs, a strong company culture sets the tone for the entire organization. Joining us now is keynote speaker, author, and executive coach Patty McCord. Patty is known for her co-authorship of the Netflix Culture Deck, a document of Netflix's company culture approach, and it serves as a guide for numerous organizations. Patty has been featured in Harvard Business Review, NPR, Fast Company, and the Wall Street Journal. Patty, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here at ASBN.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about it.
Great. So you got some big names there, not just who you have written for, but also the fact that Netflix, and they've built such an incredible company culture there. So we want to talk to you about that as well. But before we start, tell us a little bit about your journey on becoming a company culture expert. There's not a person out there that's listening to us today that is not interested in this topic. You have no company if you have no culture, right?
Yeah, well, I would say that I'm not sure I'm the expert. I would call myself, instead of an expert, a pioneer.
Okay,
and
there you go.
So we don't, no one ever really gets this right, and everybody has a culture. So that's what the rest of the conversation should be about. Sure. Because you know, the whole idea of best practices was just how we used to operate. Like, let's do what Google does because they're the best. It's like, all those bets are off now. Yeah, so let's just start with who you are and how you become a great company.
That's right. That's right. Talk to us about you know, we look at a company like Netflix, who you were with, and they have a Netflix culture deck. What's included in that? What are some of the things that companies can take away from that?
Well, so that we wrote the Netflix culture deck as an onboarding memo and way to communicate to the people that work there about how we want to work together. Mm-hmm. The Netflix culture deck took us 10 years to write. Years.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So if you're an early stage company and you say, you know, when I started consulting after I left Netflix, they'd throw the deck on and go, we want to do this. I'm like, well, there's a starting point. So
now,
it's
was it a situation where you wrote like the first part of it or the first iteration?
So here's how we did it. Reed and I had worked together at another company. And so he called me and said, I want you to work with me in Netflix. And I said, I think that's the dumbest idea anybody's ever heard of. No. And then I said, why would I do that? And he said, let's make the company we always dreamed of. And I said, how will we do that? And he said, we'll write it down. Yeah. And so first we wrote, here are the behaviors that we want to see with each other that we feel are the right way to operate, right? And then we had a layoff. We laid off a third of the people. We were doing twice as much work. Things were amazing. Then we wrote the chapter called High Performance. And here's how we wrote it. Reed would take some notes on a PowerPoint presentation. He and I would have a one-on-one. We'd talk about it. We'd talk about it with the rest of our executive staff. We would have an offsite or our company meeting. And in those days, that was standing on a picnic table in the parking lot.
That was your culture.
Yeah, and we would send everybody the email and say, comment on this. What do you think about this? How do you think about this?
Now,
so I asked him
just for context, how many people are in the company at this period of time?
100, 120.
Okay.
Right. And I said to him, when all the hoopla was, when Sheryl Sandberg said the greatest document to come out of Silicon Valley, and then I became the co-author, I said to Reed, how many hours do you think you and I spent on writing the culture deck? And he goes, forget you and me. You know, add all the other people in the company that contributed, and it's thousands, maybe millions.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would always roll everything out and say, what do you think? Is this true? Do
Yeah.
we actually live this? Is this how we do things? Do you
Sure.
have any comments? Do you want to change anything? And people would come to me and they'd complain about it. And they're like, I'm not sure that this is really what we want to say. I'm like, well, tell me it's a PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll edit it. Okay.
Sure, sure. And authenticity means a lot in something like this, which is kind of what you're talking about now, right? I mean, talk about not necessarily, the blue sky and this is the way we'd like it to be. Talk to us about the way it really is and the way you treat your people.
Well, the blue sky part is really important, especially if you're in a small to medium-sized company.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I'll tell you, everyone has a culture.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Right.
In very small companies, it's very familial,
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I want to warn you against, because it's not a family, it's a company,
Right.
and things are going to change. So the important thing is to think about what you want to be. So I think that's a really great objective. And if you can think about that as leaders in particular and write that down and then say, how do we do that? Right. So it's the culture is not what you say.
Yeah.
It's what you do.
Sure.
Right. And so you've got to be really careful about creating your own culture deck and spending a bunch of time talking about how wonderful you're going to be. But that's not who you are.
Right.
Right. And that's why the participation and collaboration with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
everybody all the way down is like, is this true? Is this not
Sure.
true? The other thing is, if you don't pay attention to it, it's going to happen anyway.
That's right. That's right. And in doing that, bringing those folks in, it develops so much more buy-in, right? I mean, this
or not,
yeah, that's true too.
Or not.
Yeah.
I mean, what I learned that was surprising to me was that people came back and people, I'm talking executives who said, I don't like this. You're talking about getting rid of loyalty, getting rid of tenure, getting rid of, career mapping. It's like, I don't like any of this. And are you sure this experiment is worth the pain that we might suffer?
Sure.
And so as a pioneer, not an expert, I would say, I don't know.
Okay,
but I think
it's okay
it makes
to say
sense. And I'm willing to be like anybody else in an innovative organization and try it.
Yeah, and you can't get any more authentic than that, right?
Well, but you have to not just try it. You have to try it for a certain period of time. Sure. And measure whether or not you were right.
Right. So with larger corporations, obviously, you think about culture and small business owners, as we just talked about, there is a culture in place. What's the best way for them to go about establishing the type of company that they want to build and the type of culture that they want to build? Does it begin with the way you did, writing it down?
Maybe, but it's just paying attention to it,
mm-hmm.
right? Which is, on a pretty regular basis, and depends on how busy you are and how early you are in the corporation, how, are you, I always say, like the first 100 people, here's what you want them to be. Mm-hmm. You want them to be smart. You want them to be the best people you can hire for what you can afford, and you want them to believe, mm-hmm. right? And how they solve problems is they work hard, right? Because particularly if you're in an entrepreneurial organization, you're not doing anything anybody else has ever done, because if it made sense, they would already have done it, right? So what you want people to do is be really brave and try things. Not that, not that, not that, not that.
Right.
And if you get lucky, you get really lucky, and the timing's right, and you have enough money, and the customers want what you make, now all of a sudden you're at scale and complexity.
Yeah.
And that's a very different organization mm-hmm. than work hard, screw it up until you get it right,
sure,
right?
Sure.
So those are two different cultures. Neither one of them is bad.
Okay.
Right? But they're different. So the most important message I can give to particularly young companies and growing companies mm-hmm. and mid-sized companies is don't don't fall in love with who you are right now when everything's working great. Because I say, beware of the smoke of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Right. Remember how it used to be? and we all knew each other,
Right.
and we were like family, and
Right.
we celebrate, it's like,
Yeah.
and it's not the way it used. I remember somebody asking me that at Netflix, I don't think management knows how things have changed. It's not like it used to be. And I said, actually, you and I have had this conversation 7 times.
Yeah.
And I'm a VP and I report to the president.
Right.
So I'm CEO. So I'm going to call me management.
Yeah.
So the first part of your sentence is wrong. Secondly, do you know what we want to be when we grow up?
Right.
No, but it's not like it used to be. I'm like, we want to be a global corporation.
Right. Right. It's not going to be like it used to be.
It's if you're successful.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Because there's no global corporations that have 50 people in them.
No,
I mean,
of course not.
maybe someday we'll figure that out.
Right. You're not walking into the CEO's office any longer because right.
Yeah, but here's the part about our culture that I think was different. I said to him, it's okay, you won't be here. Because that's not what you love, right?
Yeah,
you're not that kind of person, and you don't have the experience to work at scale, and so that recognizing that your culture will change is the most important message I can give to your listeners.
Right. So it really is just kind of a timely situation that what the culture looks like today could be completely different than 24 months from now. It will be.
Will be. But
sure.
So that's back to the writing things down.
Right.
But if you say, okay, here's the stuff that's sacrosanct. We will give you honest feedback in the moment.
Right.
We will always try and be better. And so when we give you feedback, the feedback is intended not to prove that you're a bad person,
right,
but to make you a better person so you'll be a better employee to serve the customer better, right? And that we will take care to respect each other, and we will take care to pay attention to the P&L, because that's what really matters. And we will take care to have honesty and integrity as part of who we are. And those things don't change if you're 100 people, or if you're 1,000 people, if you're 100 people.
That's the North Star right there. It's difficult. You had mentioned early on you had cutbacks, as many companies do go through, especially small companies and startups and such, and you kind of recoil and say, oh, we're too heavy on the employee side, or we're going to pivot to this product or that service or whatever. We don't need that. Can that be a real torpedo in the side of the company culture?
Only if it's a surprise.
Only if what?
It's a surprise.
Okay.
So I think one of the most important chapters of the Netflix culture deck is context, not control.
Okay.
Which is, if you share information, as much information as you can possibly share with anybody, you hire people that are smart enough to figure it out. So I think most people, if you teach them, can read a P&L.
Yeah.
Here's how the money comes in. Here's how we spend the money. Here's what profit looks like. Right. It's not brain surgery.
Sure.
Right. So if we spend more than comes in, then we lose money, and then that's a bad thing.
Right.
Right. And so if we hired too many people, and those people the people that we hired don't increase revenue to a certain percent, and we start to lose money, and we can't, cut back on it. Like our layoff was like, we couldn't cut back on the cost of DVDs. We couldn't cut back on the postage. Right. So the only thing we could cut was salaries.
Yeah.
Right. And then what we said was, well, maybe we shouldn't do sports, and maybe we shouldn't do porn, and maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't do ads, and maybe we should just make DVDs by mail the most incredible thing it can be.
Right.
So if you're not directly working on making DVD by mail amazing, it's not that you're not good.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't need you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, people can hear that.
Yep. That's right.
You don't hurt their feelings when you say, love you, and you're doing an amazing job, but what you're doing isn't contributing to revenue growth.
That's right.
And if we don't grow, for us, it was like, and if we don't grow, we will die.
Yeah. That's right.
It's like, do we keep fewer people and keep the company alive, or do we keep lots of people and die?
That's
and so people get that.
That's right. They do. There's no question about it. And to your point, it starts with hiring smart people that will get that. And that's really what you want, in your company, so that you can be this transparent with them, and they're not going to freak out or say, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?"
And you can teach them, right? You can teach them how. You can say, when somebody says, "Oh, I thought this management decision was completely stupid," so I can respond and say, "Okay, I have 2 questions for you, and the second one's more important. If you were in management, what decision would you have made?"
There you go.
That's
a good one.
If you were in management, what information would you want to have to make the best decision?
There you go. You just put
that takes care of the nobody asked me.
Right.
Well, if you didn't speak up,
that's right.
We didn't hear you.
That's right. I love it. That's a great starting place right there. And that will typically do the job, just those 2 questions.
But you have to do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so that when the new person starts, the old person says, "Hey, listen, just got to tell you, if you're going to speak up and complain about something, you better have a solution."
Yeah. Right. And that's part of our culture,
it can't
too.
Be.
Yeah.
And but those are the things. It's the actions that create culture.
Yeah.
So I don't think culture is something you're like, "I'll have 2 cultures, please, and a latte." Right? It's a way of being.
Yeah.
And so you have to take it seriously, and taking it seriously is not writing a culture deck.
Right. It's living it every day.
And realizing, shoot, what we did last year that seemed so amazing and successful could be the wrong strategy for next year.
That's right.
We should talk about that. And we should talk about that with everybody.
Yep. Absolutely. Can't agree more. Patty McCord, keynote speaker, author, and executive coach. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. This has been awesome, and I know that our viewers and subscribers are going to get a lot out of your visit with us. So thank you. Love to do a follow-up with you, because I have about 20 more questions on this very topic that I know our viewers want to get answers to.
Well, let's do that sometime. Okay. That'd be great. All right. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.